Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Frank Life, a podcast inspiring you to take charge of your relationships, career, and financial success. I'm Frank, and I am thrilled to have you here listening today. For those of you new here, I work with businesses seeking to raise the energy and awareness levels within their leadership, and I also run a private coaching practice where I support individuals who are feeling stuck and stressed in an area of life. And one of those areas is the focus of today's episode. In this episode, I'll be coaching a guest on the air who wants to cut through their stress so they can create positive change in their lives. All guests on the show are real people with real challenges, and it's my intention to be as frank as I can be with them so they can move forward with confidence and clarity. Now, before we dive in, today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Now, Audible is phenomenal. If you haven't tried them out, you have to give it a shot. They are a premier provider of digital audiobooks. So if you are someone who prefers to listen to a book rather than read it, then I have good news for you because they are hooking up you with a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is head to audibletrial.com/thefranklife. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from, and their Audible titles play on iPhones, Kindles, Androids, and pretty much any other smartphone and device out there. That's audibletrial.com/thefranklife. Thanks, Audible, for sponsoring this podcast, and to all of our listeners, enjoy. Okay, so before I introduce today's guest, I've got a little question for you. Have you ever felt pressured to fit into an image of who you should be when truthfully you know that's not who you want to be? Well, today's guest's name is Abby, and she's had an estranged relationship with her parents for a couple years now. And recently, her dad has become ill, and now she's dealing with a struggle where she feels obligated to take care of her father and be a good daughter, but also keep healthy boundaries and remain true to who she is. And if you listen closely, by the end of our conversation, she comes up with a way to free herself of the guilt that's been weighing her down and have a plan that allows her to be loving to her family and truthful to herself. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello, caller. Welcome to the show. What's your name and where are you calling in from?
Hi, my name is Abby. I'm calling from San Diego.
Hello, Abby from San Diego. And what inspires you to call today?
I'm having some family issues with my nuclear family, with my mom, my dad, and my sister. And I was hoping maybe you could help me get a little bit of clarity around what I'm feeling and also clarity around what I should potentially do next in my situation.
Okay. So if we were to explore this right now, if we were to come up with that clarity, what would be the one thing you'd like to be clear on?
Without getting too much into the story right at this moment, it's basically clarity on whether the path that I'm going down of being estranged from my family is the one that I should stay on, or whether I need to reconnect with them in some sort of way, and actually whether I should see them or not.
Okay, so it sounds like you're struggling between a decision of staying on the path where you're currently estranged, or if you really should make an effort to, I guess, bring them back in your life.
Correct.
Okay. So tell me where you're struggling with that right now.
Yeah. So basically, again, I don't want to dive too much into it. It's such a history, as it is with all our families, I'm sure. But basically, my family and I, there was a lot of unhealthy, toxic relationships between us, and strange codependence, and just a lot of criticism, especially with my mother always telling me I wasn't doing anything right, wasn't doing anything correctly, always looking at me to see if I was gaining weight, how I was looking, and in addition to that, I kind of felt like I was always in the bottom of the totem pole. Anytime I had any needs, I was always just selfish for having needs, and I was ungrateful, and all these other sorts of things. And we actually worked together. We had a business together as a family, so I was seeing them for 10 years, I was seeing them every day. And so it just started getting just worse and worse. And so it got to a point where something big happened and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I've been estranged from them for about 2 years now, meaning I haven't seen them. I haven't spoken to them. I had set a boundary with them, telling them that I needed to get my life back on track. And that when I was ready to talk, then I would let them know. So they've actually honored that boundary, which I'm shocked about because we never grew up having boundaries at home. And now and then we'll communicate over email or text if we need to, but that's about it. But most recently, I found out that my dad has a disease that's degenerative. And so I'm having so much guilt coming up. I mean, I'm having nightmares and all these things. I'm feeling like I'm such a bad daughter because in our family, the children were always had to be, we were almost like subservient to our parents. So it wasn't healthy at all, but I'm feeling just a tremendous amount of guilt. And it's just not sitting with me. And I'm not sure, I'm afraid of going back into it because I just don't know how I would be able to hold my boundaries anymore. And I know that they're not going to change. But again, there's just so much guilt around the actions that I'm taking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, this goes way back, it sounds like, for starting at your upbringing, really, where you grew up in this codependent, toxic environment. You had your mom who would judge you for your appearance and your weight. And it takes a lot of courage to come to a place in life where you actually will set boundaries and especially tell family members that you're not going to relate to them if it means it's going to hurt you in some way. So I admire your courage and strength that it must have taken to even set those boundaries a couple of years ago. And now it sounds like where you're struggling is your dad his health is declining and got this totally understandable guilt because you deep down really still care about him. Even though there's been that separation, you still have a love and an appreciation for him. And you want to be a good daughter while also respecting your own boundaries. So instead of experiencing guilt right now, if you could have it your way and wave a magic wand over the situation right now, what would you want to feel instead?
I mean, freedom and comfort with my choice. And, really, that's what it is. That's what it'd be.
Freedom.
Just feeling good about the path that I'm taking. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about what freedom means to you.
Yeah, in this situation, it's just, I guess, not being weighed down by the expectations of what I should do. And there's something there also with once, my parents, especially once their life comes to pass, am I going to regret this time that I've taken away from them? So just, I guess, freedom of anything like that, any sort of expectations, any sort of guilt and fear that I'm going to regret my choices.
Okay. So you said the word regret a few times. Am I going to regret this choice of staying away? When you lean into that a little bit more, what comes up for you?
I don't know. I mean, I guess one thing is, will I have a lot of sadness afterward that I don't know, the word that comes to me is wasted, that I wasted this time while they were still alive in spending it with them. And also regret as they get older. I don't know, part of me feels like it's partially my obligation to be there for them and help them through their old age the way that, I feel like it's a circle of life. They cared for me when I was younger. And then when they get older, I feel like it's partially my duty to care for them or help them through their old age.
Okay. And I'm kind of curious to know, where do you get that obligation from, that it is your duty to care for parents?
My family, from my parents, actually.
Parents. Okay. So it makes sense why, if you're not fulfilling that obligation, that they told you that you would feel guilt and possibly regret. Because your eyes right now, that's what it means to be a good daughter to them.
That's very true. That's true because, when you're raised by somebody, then they kind of teach you what your world is like, at least at first, but it's totally ingrained in me. And there's also a piece, just to mention too, where I actually even moved to far away from my family to physically remove myself from that situation. But no one really from my past life is in touch with me anymore. And I know that it's because they've been saying not so nice things about me. So while I'm comfortable with my decision on a lot of terms, that also kind of makes me feel bad, that people think that I'm a bad person.
Sounds like there's a lot that you're taking personally here, that you're a bad person for moving far away, that you're a bad daughter for not caring for your dad right now.
Yes, that's true.
What would change for you if you released that guilt and the pressure that you have on yourself right now of needing to be and prove that you're a good daughter and a good person?
I mean, I'd feel less stressed, probably sleep better, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, with all the extra stress, with that energy freed up, I feel like it would help me move forward with just things that I'm trying to work on in my own life and just goals that I have also. And I think I just feel lighter and be able to make more choices of things that would make me happy, like around the holidays or vacations or whatever, as opposed to feeling bad about how I'm not going to visit them.
So it sounds like you'd have a lot more focus on other things that are important to you that you want to enjoy in life, and you'd have a deeper mindfulness and appreciation for what is working well for you in your life.
Oh, I love that. I love that because actually I tend to have a tendency to look at what's wrong instead of what's right in my life. So yeah, if I could free myself up, then I think it would make me feel lighter and be able to see more things that are right. Because right now I just feel so clouded by what I feel like is going wrong, by this issue in particular. It really takes up a lot of space in my head.
Yeah, as it would for anybody who has such a strong influence of their family, who really feel like, they need to fit into that picture of being the good daughter, of being the good person in the family. And yet that could really cause havoc on us because we're focusing so much on how to fit into that and not into fitting into the truth of who we are and who we want to be.
Oh, I love that.
So it kind of sounds like that's where you are right now, is recognizing who are you really?
Yeah.
What it means for you to be a daughter, not what it means to other people.
That's true. Yeah, definitely. Ooh.
I know that was a lot to throw down there, and I heard you kind of let out breath.
Yep, I did. It's really heavy because it's like, oh my gosh, who am I then?
Yeah, I can already hear a lightness in your voice just from a few minutes
Yeah,
ago.
I feel it. Yeah, I love that because it makes it seem like it's not this overarching, you're so bad, because it is, it's more like their opinion of what should be done versus what feels right for me. And that it's okay to have my own truth and my own needs and ways of wanting to live my life.
Yeah, it's totally okay to have your own needs and wants and choices for how you want to live your life as a person, as a daughter, as a friend, as anyone.
Thank you.
So, what do you want it to mean, in your own words, to be a daughter?
I mean, I guess what keeps coming up for me is respectful, but in a way where it is important for me to have boundaries. Where in any relationship, I think it has to feel good for both parties in some way, or at least for me, in my personal experience, it's like I'd like to have some relationship with them. And I still miss my mom, even though we've had tough times. So still have some sort of a relationship, but not necessarily to be all in the way that I have been before. And actually, to that point, it's interesting. Yeah, because I had a friend who pointed out to me that I still have a relationship with my family. It's just different than the way that it used to be.
Exactly.
So sometimes that feels really good to me. And then other times I'm like, but especially I think when I found out my dad got sick, that kind of threw a wrench in that.
As it would, because you were living in that old expectation of who you should be as a daughter, which is someone who's obligated to not have any of their own boundaries and needs, but really sacrifice that for the care of the parents, which doesn't leave you with much freedom at all. And
that's right.
Who could blame you for wanting freedom in life? Who could really blame you for that?
Yeah.
So you were saying a few interesting things there about, I want to be respectful as a daughter. I want to have this relationship, but not be all in. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much freedom do you feel in that? Be honest with yourself, with 10 being totally free and 1 being you still feel totally weighed down by these expectations of who you should be.
Yeah, it's pretty low. It's pretty low. I mean, maybe like a 2.
Yeah. Which is more than a 1 or a 0.
That's true.
So that's progress. So what would be different if that were to be a 3 or a 4, meaning you felt more free as a daughter?
I'm trying to think, because it would have something to do with me still feeling like I'm doing my part in a way. And as strange as it sounds, that by giving a little bit more, maybe that it would make me feel more free. But I think what it might do is relieve a little bit of the guilt, which could feel a little bit lighter. Like actually, for instance, I had received a package from them last week. And my dad had checked in by email to see if I received the package. And my mother was the one who told me that my dad was sick. And so normally I wouldn't have done this, but I replied to my dad and I said, I received the package. Hey, how are you feeling? And then he wrote back and he just said, I'm not in too much pain. I'm just taking some medicine. And then I actually wrote back and I said, I'm so glad to hear that, because it was really upsetting and shocking to hear the news. And so I kind of like gave a little bit more than I normally would have given, but it makes me feel a little bit better in some way.
So based off of that, what does that tell you about who you want to be as a daughter?
That I don't have to be completely, so I guess, there's a difference between, what am I thinking, boundaries and having like a brick wall put up where there's just absolutely no communication at all. There's nothing whatsoever. So maybe I can still have this quote unquote relationship with them and share a couple of things here and there, and therefore help to relieve my guilt of being a horrible daughter. But I can still honor my boundaries of not necessarily wanting to see them, at least at this time.
So you'd be sharing a little bit more. That would help you relieve some of that guilt, right, of being a horrible daughter. And what's just interesting, just an observation about that is, how could you be a horrible daughter if you are the one placing that judgment on what it means to be a daughter to them?
Wait, tell me a little bit more about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so you're giving yourself the judgment, I'm a horrible daughter when I do this or when I don't do that. So whose definition are you basing that off of?
I mean, mine, but indirectly my parents, because we were literally told all these things that were expected of us as a daughter. So I still have that old programming, that old story in my head. So I'm still kind of riding off of that a little bit, I guess. Well, not just a little bit, a lot bit.
A lot of it, right. So there's the distinction between who they expect you to be as their daughter and your choice to show up how you want as their daughter.
That's right. Yep.
So
there's something interesting with that too.
Yeah, what's interesting about it for you?
I don't know, that loosened something up for me. Something about what you just said, something about, it is me striving to be myself and just really who I really am and just living my life that way. And something about the way that you phrased that just loosened, it loosened like a little rock in my foundation or something. That's what it felt like. It's about what their expectation is versus what I really want and who I am and how I want to show up. I know it's just like a change of words, but something about that feels a little bit better.
Yeah, because you are now taking more responsibility for deciding who you are and who you want to be, rather than...
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I love that you like it. Uh,
No, I like that because, what's interesting about that too is we were talking before about guilt, and the guilt was due to me feeling like I wasn't doing enough, that I was pushing it away. But taking responsibility for myself is actually me going into action and doing something. So it actually even relieves some of the guilt, if that makes sense, because I'm doing something now and not just being totally passive and putting up a blockade.
yes, totally. So when you
Mm-hmm.
step into that approach of taking responsibility, what would you do when it comes to the situation with your dad?
I mean, first of all, the first thing that just comes to mind is just generally speaking, I feel more empowered taking this stance, and it feels so much better. But in terms of what would I do, I guess what I would do is I would check in with him directly a little bit more from time to time. I mean, again, still over email or maybe text, but actually taking an active participation in instead of wondering, because I was imagining just these horrible visions in my head of what he must be like with this disease, and I was becoming terrified by that. But by actually taking action and directly hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, then it can also help me feel better, help me feel like I'm doing something, but also relieve these crazy visions that I'm having in my head about what he must be like now.
Hmm. Hmm. Love that. I can just hear
Mm-hmm.
just how much more excitement that brings in you and clarity than
Yeah,
like, oh, what should I do? I feel guilty.
totally.
I feel guilty if I do it, guilty if I don't. Because either way,
Exactly.
someone's losing here.
Yeah, the one thing that's still keeping me stuck in this is a little bit of fear. It's like I've been through so much with them that there's still a fear of me in revealing too many things that are personal about my life. I'm afraid they're going to come back and tear it apart like they've always used to in the past.
Yeah, that's a very understandable fear to have, that if you share personal things,
Hmm.
you're going to rip it apart because it's what's
Hmm.
happened before. Yet what
Hmm.
is different about you now, being someone who is taking responsibility for who you are as a daughter and choosing to show up in your way?
Well, one thing is that I have noticed, it's been 2 years now, as I mentioned, since we really saw each other and since I set this boundary. And then when I have shared things, they've been giving me evidence that actually, I think they get it at this point now that I'm really holding tight to this. So they've been trying to be really encouraging when I do share things. And they've been actually really kind to me and nice to me whenever they respond to me about anything at all. Um, so,
Hmm.
so I guess that's all I'm thinking is that they're starting to give me evidence that maybe there is a little bit of an opening for them as well.
Wow. So, what I also
Hmm.
heard from that, Abby, is that when you showed up sharing and opening yourself up more, they responded to
Hmm.
that and related to you on that level.
They did. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it just to go along with what you were sharing before,
Hmm.
when you show up feeling guilty deep down and just trying to prove that you're not a horrible daughter, that they're going to respond to that type of energy, that type of attitude by
Hmm.
reinforcing those expectations on you. Yet when you show up with more responsibility and choosing how you want to be and what you want to share, they're going to also meet you in a different way when it comes to your relationship.
Wow. You're right. That feels so much better. It's even though I've been living my life and seeing this on my own, but somehow the way that you're paraphrasing it or summarizing it, yeah, it makes me see it so much differently. It makes me feel so much better. It's great.
So as we kind of wrap up here, what's
Hmm.
something that you'd like to commit yourself to doing, given what we've talked about here?
Um, I mean, I had mentioned it before, but instead of, my mother and I are the ones who primarily communicate. So instead, if what I'm concerned about at the moment is my father, which it is, to try to engage with him more directly. And maybe I'll check in with him again in a couple of weeks and just see how he's feeling. Um, because, and then I think that's what I'm going to do. And that makes me feel better and more empowered and doesn't make me feel like I'm abandoning them completely. Um, That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to check in with my dad in, let's say, 4 weeks in a month,
Okay.
something like that. And then I'm going to send him an email and check in and see how he's feeling and what's new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love that. Awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
how free do you feel in
A
choosing
lot better.
to feel that way? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I feel a lot more free because, again, like we were saying, it's by taking responsibility, it just makes me feel more empowered and like I'm taking action, I'm doing something, not just completely being run over by all these scary thoughts that are in my head, which maybe are not even necessarily true. It's like I'm creating my own truth.
I love that. I am creating my own
Mm-hmm.
truth. I am
Mm-hmm.
creating what it means to be a daughter.
Yep. Yes. Totally. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much.
So good.
This is awesome. How would you feel about checking in with me that next time you connect with your dad and let me know how it goes?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to do that.
Very cool. I just wanted to add that I'm really blown away just at your level of commitment to being able to honor and respect your parents, yet also respect yourself and really get clear
Yeah.
on what that means for you so that you could be living in your own truth, yet also showing up as the wonderful daughter that you are. So I really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being an example of that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Honestly, my whole body has been just so tight and my jaw's been tight and I've just been having, like I said, nightmares and just feeling so much stress. And I feel so much lighter and more free. And actually, my mind is no longer just spinning around the family issues. It's now I'm excited to go and start working on this work project that I have and do all these other things. So I feel so much lighter and more relieved and just so much better overall. Thank you so much.
I'm clapping my hands right now. I'm so excited for you. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for being a guest on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap. What a fun conversation. That was really awesome to have the opportunity to coach Abby. And there's a tremendous lesson we can all learn from that. And it is around guilt. Now, think about where in life you experience guilt currently. Guilt is an incredibly insightful emotion. It allows us to realize when we are living out of other people's expectations and standards. And it's also a sign that we are not taking responsibility for who we are. So we feel guilty at times when we don't take responsibility for how it is that we want to show up in a relationship or in a situation. And it's totally normal to experience that. We are all guilty of feeling guilty at times. Yet when we recognize the guilt, we're able to choose what it is we want to do with that. And that was really when Abby had her breakthrough. When she not only recognized the guilt, but took responsibility for it. That's when she started to feel more empowered rather than being run over by all of the scary thoughts in her head. She gave herself permission to create her own truth of who she wants to be as a daughter rather than who others expect her to be. So, the best way to overcome guilt is to choose who you want to be. So, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked at the beginning of this show. Where in life do you feel that you are fitting into an image of who you should be? Now, take a moment and think further. Whose expectations are you trying to meet? And if you freed yourself of those expectations, what would happen? How would you show up? And most importantly, who would you be? Well, this has been such a fun episode, you guys. New episodes are posted just about every Friday, so subscribe on iTunes or Google Play so you don't miss the next one when it comes out. And if you are feeling stuck or stressed out in an area of life and want some support, I'd love to have you as a guest on our show. Head over to thefranklife.com/podcast to apply to be a guest on a future episode. And a few people have reached out to me and said, oh my gosh, I really want to be on the show, but I just don't want my name out there. Well, that's totally understandable. And you are totally able to give yourself a nickname so that we respect your privacy. Now, one little shout out to our entrepreneurs listening. Do you feel like your business isn't growing as quickly as you thought it would? And do you ever wish that you could hit a fast forward button when it comes to marketing and sales? Well, you now can. In case you've missed it, enrollment is open for my exclusive business building mastermind. It's called Fast Forward with Frank. And if you want to learn more and send in those applications, head over to thefranklife.com/fast. That's thefranklife.com/FAST. And our early bird special is ending on August 26th, so go ahead and send in those applications, and I look forward to reading them. Thank you all for being a supporter and listener of this show. I'm off to enjoy a lovely weekend in Seattle. As always, it has been great being frank with you. Ciao for now.